retired Lieutenant General George Loving. How about a round of applause for him?
Can you hear me in the back? Well, I'm so pleased that you've come this morning to listen to me talk about my experiences as a fighter bomber pilot in Korea. Hope I live up to your expectations. So let's get going. The place I want to start is with Korea itself. Korea's place in the world, why we got involved in the war there. If you look at this map, you see that Korea is surrounded by three expansionist powers: Russia, China, and Japan. For centuries, the Chinese dominated affairs in Korea. There's a great interchange between them for many years. And then, in 1884, the Japanese got interested. There was a war between China and Japan was the winner. Well, that held for a while, and then the Russians got interested. There was another war, Russo-Japanese War. That was in 1904. And again, the Japanese were the victor. At that point, the Japanese annexed Korea, 1910. Became a colony, ruled with an iron fist. World War II came along, and the Allied leaders, Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, and Chiang Kai-shek, decided they should communicate that in due time, Korea should be set free. But they didn't specify how. They couldn't agree. They said this would be left to the foreign ministers. And so that's the way it was when the war ended. After the first atomic bomb was dropped, the Russians entered the war. They entered Korea. And we were in a poor position then to do anything. Like take a surrender of the Japanese in Korea. So we said to the Russians, you take the surrender above the 38th parallel, that's the line that runs through the middle of the map, and we will take the surrender below the 38th parallel. At that point, we had thousands of Koreans that had to be repatriated to Korea, thousands of Japanese had to be repatriated. U.S. soldiers need to be returned to the United States with war crime trials going on all over the Pacific. We had all on the plate we could handle. So things stayed like this for a while with it. The Russians in the north and us in the south. There were a number of diplomatic meetings that took place between the two sides, and we never settled anything of importance. So in due time, the Russians installed Kim Il-sung as the dictator in North Korea, and Syngman Rhee, who was a Korean patriot, was elected the president of the Republic of Korea. And eventually we pulled out our forces, military forces out of Korea, and the Russians pulled theirs out of North Korea. We installed a training group. Now, the South Koreans were defenseless. We helped them establish a police force, an armed force, Army, Navy, Air Force, furnished them with all the equipment we could to help them get started. Then in there were border clashes on both sides. There's unrest there. In 1950, Secretary of State Dean Acheson made a speech. He made an unfortunate error, a bad error. He drew the defense line, the U.S. defense line in the Pacific. He left out Korea. He said, the United Nations have to take care of that. Well, this was the invitation to Kim Il-sung and the Russians to make a move. Now, at this point, I want to step back for a minute and talk about my earlier role. World War II, I was a fighter pilot. And I was a successful fighter pilot. I flew in the Great Strategic Air Offensive in Eastern Europe, all the countries, Eastern Europe, France, Germany, and other countries, and I became an ace during this period. Now, I mention this because I was very young, I was 21 years old. I was on top of the world. I was naive. I said, what else is there to do? I've done everything. Well, I hadn't done everything. There was a lot more to do. A few years later, this was the headline. The war started in Korea. Fortunately, I'm a Republican, we had Harry Truman. He responded, no committees, no fooling around. Put the Air Force in there, call up the Navy, and start putting reinforcements into Korea. The Cold War was at its height. We had a stake in South Korea. We'd set them up with the armed forces and the police force. We'd seen that they were set free. And so we had to respond, and we did. That's how we got involved. Now, I volunteered for this war. I'm not sure why, but I did. And this time I was a fighter bomber pilot. Now, what's the difference between a fighter pilot and a fighter bomber pilot? As a fighter pilot, World War II, I did battle with enemy flyers, 25,000 feet on down. In Korea, I would do battle with the Chinese armies and the Korean army. And that's different because I'm down in the weeds, pretty dangerous, day by day. This is my base down in the lower right-hand corner there. A place called Taegu. When I arrived at Taegu, I think it was August 1950, it was a 3,800-foot sod strip. There were 10 Mustangs. They were beat up. I flew a half dozen missions of those before I got sidetracked on another job. This base, and 5 months later, had 150 jet fighter bombers, transport aircraft, recce aircraft, and you see a lot of permanent buildings. The airplane I flew most of was the F-80C. This is a fast, sleek airplane. First U.S. Air Force airplane to go into combat. Wingspan 38 feet, length 34 feet, about 11 inches high. Not a big airplane. And here are the pilots. I'm in the middle there with, looks like a white shirt. I'm not sure what that is. A squadron, this is the non-fighter bomber squadron. Squadron those days had 25 pilots authorized, 25 airplanes, and 250 airmen. I was the major, had 4 captains, and had 20 lieutenants, 250 airmen. Here's some of the airplanes lined up. The airplane had 6 50 caliber machine guns packed in the nose. We normally carried armor-piercing incinerator rounds. In addition to this, the plane could carry 2 1,000-pound bombs, or alternatively 2 500-pound bombs, or 2 napalm tanks, plus 8 5-inch high-velocity rockets. The airplane carried a huge load of fuel, 950 gallons. More than half of that were in wing tanks, 265-gallon wing tanks. I wonder often why the wings didn't fall off when you put that fuel on there, plus those 1,000-pound bombs. But I never heard of the wings falling off. Now, I flew missions in support of at least 4 areas. One, close air support, which I define as this is when the enemy and friendly forces are so close together as to require a controller to be sure that you don't do harm to friendly forces. I flew a lot of those missions. Counter operations, probably the most important thing we did is to maintain air superiority so that friendly forces were free from enemy air attack. We were very good at that. We attack airfields constantly. Air interdiction strikes are those carried up behind the lines as far as 360 miles back in the enemy territory, try to staunch the flow of enemy logistics. And of course, I participated in some rescue operations. Here's some of the enemy soldiers that I attacked whenever I could find them. I attacked those soldiers, their weapons.
We're having sound issues, sir.
Right.
There we go. Let's try that. See if that's better.
Napalm attack. but took down bridges, got fuel dumps, airfields, trucks, trains. Now I want to give you a little brief overview of the Korean War. It's a small country. It started when the North Koreans invaded and almost pushed us off the peninsula. The Russian reinforcements held on with their fingernails. The only thing that saved us was air power, fighter bombers, keeping the pressure on them. Because when they kept enough pressure on, MacArthur conceived a plan of putting an amphibious landing behind the lines at Incheon, south of the capital city of Seoul. It was a very successful mission by the Marines, and then shortly after that, 8th Army broke up from the Pusan Peninsula and started to move north. They moved very rapidly north. Now, this is when MacArthur made a very bad mistake. He was keen on unifying Korea. That was his dream. He simply would not accept reality. He would not accept the reality of the Chinese were ready to intervene in this war. There were all sorts of signs. They intervened on a small scale and on a larger scale. And the result of this, 8th Army retreated largely in disarray. It was a horrible scene. After that, the war settled down around the 38th parallel. That's where it stayed for a couple of years. See where I am now. We're back up. Okay. I'm going to talk about a close air support mission. This is a mission that carried me to Shipyeon-mi. This was a pivotal battle in the Korean War. Yeah, up to this time, 8th Army, when it met offensive force, it withdrew. MacArthur said, in this case, you've got to hold this position. This is important. If they break through here, they'll go all the way down to the Yonne River. So what do we got here? We've got a 23rd Regimental Combat Team of 1,500 soldiers. 1,500. Some of those French. They're surrounded by 8,000 to 10,000 Chinese. They're mashed into an area about 1 3/4, about 1.5 miles. Now, can they survive? Well, then a new command of 8th Army, Matthew Ridgway, crackerjack general. He said to his staff and he said to his subordinates, look, Chinese have one advantage. They have manpower, unlimited. But they have inferior artillery, inferior communications, inferior logistics system. We've got control of the air, they have none. We're going to cause them to gather in around us, and we're going to kill them right there. This is what I want you to do, just right here at Shipyeon-mi. So my first mission at Shipyeon-mi was to fly the 4 aircraft. We always flew 4 aircraft. And I contacted a controller, airborne controller, who had me make an identifying turn, and then he fired a white phosphorus rocket. And that's the point from which I took my directions. And this point was to the to the east of the perimeter. He said, I want you to lay down your napalm south to north on a line located 50 yards beyond my white phosphorus rocket. I want number 2 to lay down parallel to that, and number 3 and 4 to extend it out. And that's what we did. Now, napalm is a fearsome weapon. It sticks to everything it touches. It burns to over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. It sucks the oxygen out of the air. It can destroy a tank. Kills people pretty quickly. We lay down our napalm. We went in at 100 feet, 450 miles an hour. That was our defense. Moved fast. Dropped the napalm about 300 yards short of the target, and watched it hit and spread out a long swath. Then we were instructed to strafe in adjoining areas. So this was my first mission to Shipyeon-mi. The next day I was back again, this time to the south of that, the bottom of that map there. And did the same kind of mission, napalm, strafing, and so forth. Now, at the end of this, help, the Chinese withdrew. We killed 5,000 of them. 5,000, half their force. This is the first time they withdrew to defeat. The war continued pretty much along the lines after that. So the ratio, we had 51 of the Allies killed and 5,000 of the Chinese. That's a pretty good ratio, 100 to 1. Dropping napalm. I want to talk about dive bombing a bridge. Get a lot of this. This is a single track railroad bridge, very narrow, very definitely hit. This bridge is located about 260 miles from base. Your flight of 4, located with 1,000-pound bombs. Now, this is January. The wind whistles down out of Siberia. I never got warm during that winter. So you dressed for the eventuality of having to bail out of the enemy territory. You start with heavy woolen socks, long johns, a wool shirt or trousers, and a flight suit with pockets. In the pockets you put a radio about 3/4 the size of a cigar box, big and heavy, very important for rescue purposes. Also extra socks, warm gloves, a hat that covers the ears. Over that you put your escape vest. This contained all sorts of things, water purification tablets, compass, map, coins, blood shits, fish hooks, everything you can imagine. Over that I put my 45 caliber shoulder holster, extra ammunition in my pockets, then my flight jacket. I'm pretty much ready to go then except for gloves and helmet. We cruised out at 21,000 feet. You'll like this. You cruise out at 21,000, you cruise back at 20. That's the air traffic control system we used. It worked very well. 50 miles short of the target, I descended to bombing altitude, 10,000 feet. Well, we're not going to waste any time. The target could be defended. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We'd be in and out with 4 aircraft, dropping those bombs in 3 minutes. We're moving fast. Now, in my flight was a fellow by the name of Captain Richard Krosky, experienced pilot. He had said during the briefing that he had been on an earlier mission to bomb this bridge and all had near misses. He was going to nail it this time. I took it as a little bravado, but okay, we'll see. Now, our bombing was basically manual. We had no computers in those days. And the critical factors were the dive angle, I had to establish that. The compass, we had an altimeter to tell us the release altitude with an airspeed indicator. The wind was a big factor. At the briefing, we got the wind to the meteorologist, but how accurate is that when it's doing it from 260 miles away? So we could rely on smoke we see on the ground. Often smoke from charcoal fires, particularly in January. I forgot to mention one thing. We wore a G-suit. Now, a G-suit is not a suit at all. A G-suit is a pair of trousers that lace up along both sides very tightly. It contains bladders. And when you pull G's in the airplane, turn sharply, the bladders inflate around the calves of the legs, around the abdomen. And this prevents the blood, it stops the blood from flowing from the brain down to the lower extremities. With a G-suit, you can normally start a black eye around 4 Gs, you can go up to 4.5 to 5.5 Gs. So this was a big advantage to a dive bomber pilot. Over the As I approached the bridge, when the bridge passed under my left wing, at a certain point between my wing, and a 45-degree dive, retarded the throttle, opened the speed brakes. I need to slow down to have time to stabilize on the target. Adjusted for the wind, 5,000 feet, I released the bombs. So I pull up at 4,000 feet. I didn't want to go below 4,000 feet because you get down in the danger zone when you go below 4,000 feet. A danger from the bombs exploding beneath you, taking you down. My bombs hit the abutment to the bridge, and now number 2 is coming down. His bombs were near misses, produced 2 big geysers in the water. Now it's Captain Krosky's time. He's starting down, looks good, right on the money. But he passes 5,000 feet, I don't see any bombs. He passes 4,000 feet, I still don't see any bombs. I muttered to myself, he's going too low. And then the bombs released. They took down the center span. But then I saw that he was spewing fire like a 4th of July rocket. I quickly radioed to him, really easy, 3, you're on fire, bail out. I repeated that twice. There's no response. Apparently he'd been incapacitated. His airplane dozed down across the river and slammed into the hill. Sad ending to a fine pilot. We made a couple of circuits of the crash site, another where it was on the aeronautical chart, and then continued on our mission of making an armed reconnaissance of a nearby road. Here's the bridge. We were always after doing all we could to staunch the flow of logistics on the part of the Chinese. Their principal way of moving logistics was via train. I just work here. The trains operated at night, and at dawn they hid them in tunnels. But someone returning from a night mission noted that they were not all in the tunnels right at dawn. There was some sort of lagging along. So that set in motion the great locomotive hunt. This is nighttime. We had a briefing at 3:30 in the morning. I didn't like that. We were off at 4:30. We were over the assigned area at a tunnel entrance 30 minutes before dawn. And we searched diligently, hoping to open a firebox maybe, give some evidence of their presence. But there was no locomotive there. So I went to my second target area. Oh my gosh, there wasn't one locomotive, or 2, there were 3. They had up a head of steam, black smoke was pouring out. They were in a race for their lives, because we were going to stop them. The job then was to stop the first locomotive. Once you stopped the first one, you had the others. Well, we're in a mountainous terrain. It's not yet full light. You have to be very careful. But in strafing an F-80, highly accurate. You really can't miss. I was first on the target. This is what a locomotive, North Korean locomotive looked like. This is what it looks like when you put a few armor-piercing rounds in it. He's out of action. I instructed number 2 to put his rockets in there just in case. And then we set to work on the other 2 locomotives and rendered them operative also to strafe the lost cause of a carrion. Now, in this war, we did something and we reacted, they reacted. They acted, we reacted. So the next thing was, well, we got to go in those tunnels and get those locomotives. So we want you to skip bomb. Skip bombs into the tunnels. Well, the tunnels are not very big. The 11 inch 11 feet 2 inches wide and 14.9 inches high. Very small. You couldn't put two bombs in there side by side. You had to aim at the right edge of the target of the tunnel. So my left bomb would go in, if I was lucky, would go into the tunnel, and the right bomb would hopefully strike near the entrance and collapse it. Now, skip bombing, I hadn't done skip bombing before. We had a weapons manual, taught me how to do it. You need a good long lead in, about 5 miles, at least 5 miles. You need the mountains configured so you can get out of there after you drop your bombs. We use 10-second delay fuses, very important. Otherwise, we wouldn't get out of there alive. Now, if you get down to 25 feet, the terrain is relatively level. You're going 450 miles an hour. A bomb can skip 2 miles. It's a porpoise like this. The height of the porpoise depends on how low you are. That's why you get down 25 feet. Now, it's a pretty sporty course down to 25 feet, going 450 miles an hour. I was very lucky. The first try, I put one right in the tunnel and one right beside it on the right, collapsed the entrance. 10 seconds later, boom, debris comes rolling out of the tunnel with a lot of black smoke. And the tunnel collapses, the entrance collapses. Then we'd have my flight around to the exit of the tunnel, and they all had near misses, which is not surprising. It's a very small target. This effort against tunnels succeeded. We had fighter bomber groups all over the place going after these tunnels. Not all of them were amenable. Had to have a long lead in. We were successful in our tunnel busting. County operations. You can see that a lot of airfields in Korea, 27 airfields in North Korea. And we, 5th Air Force, did a reconnaissance of those every day or so. Whenever there was a sign of activity, they would lay a mission on. We'd go and cradle the runways and knock out the facilities. B-29s did some of these. Fighter bombers did most of them. Now, at a certain point, the airfield out against the border there, the Sinuiju, became very active. The Chinese were building it up, and they brought in fighter bombers, 38 attack aircraft. That's the Yak-9, the IL-10, and putting in all the logistics. And they were determined to mount some air activity in Korea. Well, this is at this point, was the most heavily defended airfield in North Korea. So 5th Air Force laid on a mission. This would be a task force of 312
Hang on a second. That was unpleasant. All right, try it now, sir.
Okay. It would be a task force of 312 fighter bombers. Sounds like overkill. Well, in addition to destroying this airfield, this is going to be a shore force. We're going to show the Chinese who they were mucking with. The defenses were made up of 37 millimeter and 85 millimeter anti-aircraft weapons, which 37 millimeter was effective up to 4,500 feet, and the 85 millimeter was effective up to 25,000 feet. Plus, just across the river, within sight of this airfield, was a base, Chinese base of 80 MiG-15s. They were the defenses. My group was the lead group. Our mission was flak suppression. We'd be first over the target and do our best to suppress the flak so that all the fighter bombers coming in would be free from harassment. we put aloft all 3 squadrons, 4 flights each, a couple of 1,000-pound bombs, and each flight leader had a photo of the gun emplacement site that he was supposed to attack. We got airborne, all 48 aircraft, headed north, and as soon as we got on the course, the group commander radioed me. He was aborting, and I was now leading the formation. Navigation was easy. It was a clear day. The challenge was to get there on the 2nd, because timing was everything. We needed the first fighter bombers to go in immediately after we did the flag suppression strike. As I approached the Siniyiju, the 85mm anti-aircraft burst started to appear in the sky. Greasy black smoke marking the point of explosion of the anti-aircraft shells. There was a lot of it. It was basically above us. Now, from my World War II experience, I was pretty much immunized to this. There's nothing I could do about it. Put your head down and do what you've got to do. My target was on a sandbar in the Yellow River. I had to cross the airfield to get to it. As we approached the airfield, all the flights broke out, headed to their gun sites to make an attack. All of our attacks were on time and on target. As I started down my dive bomb run, I saw flashes of the anti-aircraft gun being fired at me. I said to myself, "You commie bastards, that'll be the last 5 shots you fire." Our exit route was down the Yellow River to the Yellow Sea. We were followed by almost 250 fighter bombers. At the end of the day, at the end of the 2-hour raid, all the airplanes on the base have been destroyed. All the buildings have been destroyed. The fueling system has been destroyed. There was nothing left. Now, right across the river were 80 MiGs. I saw them as I was making my dive bomb run. I didn't know why they didn't get airborne. Eventually, a few got airborne, but they did not engage our forces. Now, think of this. Think of the effect on morale of the Chinese and Russian pilots. Here's an airfield within sight of them, and they can't defend it. This was the show of force we had. .85mm. We're taking off there with our bombs. Now moving on to another mission. We had route segments of roads assigned to each squadron. And we made an armed reconnaissance of those routes on a regular basis. And we shot up anything we found on those roads. Purple 11 was a bad one. It was right up against the border, within range of the MiGs. So I set off on a reconnaissance, an armed reconnaissance of Purple 11, and we encountered, very luckily, a convoy of 20 trucks. We riddled it. The airplane, you can't miss strafing, but armor-piercing incendiary ammunition. We left that convoy in flames. Went on down the road, and had 2 boxcars sitting there. The doors are closed. Are they empty? Is anything inside? We have to take a look. I sent number 3 and 4 up to 10,000 feet as top cover because we were in MiG territory. And I backed off and came in and fired a fuselage of rockets into the boxcars. They were full of ammunition. Gigantic explosion. As I was dodging the debris from this explosion, Bullet 3 called and said, 4 bogies approaching fast from the north. I didn't like the sound of that. I said, are they MiGs? Shortly after, he said, they're MiGs. Now, 3 and 4 at that point did a split us and got out of there. I'm pinned on the deck. I'm in trouble. The MiGs were a next generation airplane. They were about 80 to 100 miles an hour faster than the F-80 I was flying. The MiG pilots, Chinese or Russian, had the high ground. They were 10,000 feet. I'm down on the deck. They're in their backyard, and I'm 360 miles from home. There's 4 of them against 2 of us. Things don't look too good. We had one advantage going for us. I had experience, a lot of experience in World War II. I understood the dynamics of dogfighting. I was pretty confident I could probably escape destruction at this point. Now, my strategy at this point was to set up a high-speed climb, get at altitude. Altitude you can maneuver, altitude you can convert into airspeed, and try to draw the MiGs out from their base. They normally didn't operate more than 100 miles from their base. So I set that up. Meanwhile, I've got to watch those MiGs. I cannot, for even a moment, take them out of my sight. It would be deadly for me to do so. In due time, number 1 and 2 came starting down. They came down very steep, very fast. I said to myself that I'd never hit the side of a barn with those tactics. I expected them to come down and mix it up with us. They continued down very, very fast. At this point, I have one defensive maneuver. That is, at the right moment, turn sharply into, we call it a break, and spoil their aim. If I break too soon, they re-aim. If I break too late, I'm nailed. So I've got to use judgment on exactly when to break. I'm watching, I'm calculating. I give the preparatory command, Billy Abel. At the right moment, I said, break right. We broke, the MiGs went screaming back behind us. The cannon fire went behind us. I pulled around sharply, pulled up the nose, and gave them a long burst of my .50 caliber. Now this was foolhardy. They were out of range. I couldn't possibly hit them, but I couldn't bear being in a dogfight and not firing my guns. Turned back around and reestablished the high-speed climb. 1 and 2 went up and took a position, and 3 and 4 came off the perch. Same tactics, same result, no blood. Get back up. I said, now how long is this going to last? A jet engine at low altitude burns fuel at a ferocious rate. If they did this 2 or 3 more times, they could run me out of fuel. And I'd have to try to make a run for it, and that could be deadly. Well, one more time, 1 and 2 came down. At this point, we're almost 100 miles out. Same result as before. Exactly the same. No blood, guns fired, nobody hurt. And then they turned and went back up, and I waited. What's going to happen now? They turned and went back to the base, turned back to the base across the Yellow River. This is an F-80 strafing. You see an F-80 at the top of the screen. It's just pulled off a strafing run. They're the MiGs. Was this a dangerous operation? It was very dangerous. We authorized 25 pilots in the squadron. The number went up and down. In a 5-month period, we lost 8 pilots killed in action. It's a big loss. But the Spirit never flagged. Everybody did their job, did it well. Some more battle damage from a 37 millimeter. That had been just happened and didn't bring the plane down, but could easily have brought it down. That's a 37 millimeter weapon, artist's conception. Here's the bottom line in this war. Notice we had 7 allies. What's the bottom numbers? We had 97,768 deaths on the Allied side. And on the Chinese, North Korean side, Chinese always underestimated the numbers they announced. We estimated they had 615 casualties. This is why they eventually, even though they had unmanned power, decided on a truce. The fighter bombers played a big part in this. Everybody did their job. A national war. The red on there, which you can't see very bad, is the location of the target location of missions I flew in Vietnam. You see they're all over the place. including far down in the south, far up in the north. "113 missions." I put this on to show how little I've changed. 28 years old. I have a book which I'm discounting today. $20 plus $1 for that's $1 tax for the government. It's a good book. It's gotten good reviews. Also brought along a few copies of my World War II memoirs. It's my call sign, Woodbine, Red Leader in World War II. It's on the 4th printing. It's done fantastically well. There's over 5,000 e-books have been sold. It's been on the market 9 years. When's it stop? I don't know. But if anyone likes a copy, my son-in-law, John Phelps, he's a Vietnam War veteran, badly wounded, good fellow, drove me over here. He'll sell you a book you like it. And now, answer any questions you have.
You can do this without making. Question? Back over here.
Sir, good morning. I noticed that the F-8 was, I guess I'd call it a straight wing fighter. What was the first swept wing fighter that we got?
F-86.
86?
Yeah.
And they served in Korea as well? did they
Yeah.
not? Okay. Thank you, sir.
It was pretty much comparable to the MiG-15, although a bit superior.
That's all over here.
I see that you went from the Mustang to the F-80. What was your transition training like to go from Mustang to F-80?
No problem. I got 10 hours and they shoved me off into combat. So.
Turn on the brake.
See, I knew all the other things, just operating the airplane. The F-8 is an easy airplane to fly.
Question?
I know you spoke on Korea, but during World War II, just for my own part, the plane you flew then, did you accompany the Flying Fortresses? Is that what you were involved in World War II?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. How about a round of applause, folks?